The size of the venue you are performing in can change the type of relationship you cultivate and the type of stage presence you need to deliver to the fans, and we're going to break that topic wide open next. I'm Mike Quackenbush, and this is Till We Make It. Here on my channel, I make videos for professional wrestlers at every stage of their career. And I do this in part because when I was just starting out, when I was just a rookie, I had no mentor to guide me, and I had no coach to teach me. And I think that was a real factor in my failure to accomplish my ultimate career goals. And I don't want that exact same scenario to play out for anyone else, least of all you. Today, I want to talk about the differences in how we play a small venue and a large venue. There is an energy to a small, intimate venue that simply cannot be replicated in a giant arena setting. And similarly, there's an energy to a packed arena filled with screaming fans that cannot be replicated by a modest club, studio, or theater setting. The size of the venue that we play and the audience that it holds fundamentally changes the performer's relationship to that audience. And in the case of a very skilled show person, it even changes the way the show is oriented, blocked, and choreographed for that audience. To help me illustrate this point, I'm going to call on an example not from professional wrestling, but from music. The best-selling live album of all time is Eric Clapton's Unplugged album. It's sold in excess of 26 million copies. It's the only live recording to ever sell more than 20 million copies, and it's got a wide lead on some of those also-rans like Garth Brooks' Double Live album and Frampton Comes Alive. Clapton's Unplugged album is recorded in January of 1992 in a small studio setting before an audience of about 300 fans. And because this venue is so intimate, everything Clapton says, the audience can hear. If a song gets off to a false start, they hear Clapton stop the band and then restart the song. When Clapton asks the director if cameras were rolling during an impromptu version of Rollin' and Tumblin', the whole audience hears him call out to the director, "Did you get that?" When the audience reacts in disbelief to Clapton taking a surprise kazoo solo on an old folk song, one of his bandmates really reacts to the audience's response, calling out, "Never again." In this small venue setting, because the audience is packed in so close to the stage, and because the acoustics are so intimate, there is simply no pretending that Clapton and his band and the lucky fans in attendance and the crew from MTV cannot all hear each other. All right, now let's flip that pancake over. Just 3 months prior to recording his Unplugged album, Eric Clapton releases a monstrous double live set called 24 Nights, captured during his record-breaking run of 24 consecutive sellouts at the Royal Albert Hall. You did hear that correctly. After selling out 18 nights in a row in 1990, Clapton comes back the very next year and sells out 24 nights in a row in 1991, a record which still stands to this day. For these live gigs, Clapton isn't playing to 300 fans. Each and every night, he plays to more than 5,000. In the Royal Albert Hall setting, if Eric Clapton needs to cue his band for the next song, no one past the first row can even hear it. The opening to his song, White Room, is best described as deafening. Unlike his performance for the MTV Unplugged program, if the director of the 24 Nights recording is anywhere near the stage, there's absolutely no trace of it. And if there's any fun banter or joking between the players that are on stage, not only does the recording fail to pick it up, the audience doesn't even detect it. So unlike the previous example, in 24 Nights, it is clear to all that the audience in attendance, the film and sound crew capturing the concert, and Clapton and his band cannot hear each other. These two live performances, captured very close together, demonstrate what a skillful performer Eric Clapton is. In the intimate Unplugged setting, he knows he cannot ignore the audience, so he chooses to cultivate an informal and charming rapport with them. At his Unplugged gig, if Eric Clapton had come across as cold or detached, That disconnect would have hurt his ovations, and as the show progressed, the crowd may have engaged less and less, especially given some of the songs had to be repeated for the sake of the recording. But in the Royal Albert Hall setting, Clapton acknowledges the audience only when necessary. He does not engage them with charm or a warm rapport. He commands the stage through the power of his guitar. The performance of 24 Nights at the Royal Albert Hall evokes the original meme long before there was an internet. Sidebar. The viral spread of graffiti proclaiming Clapton is God all around London starts in the 1960s, long before Andre the Giant Has a Posse or the old NES Pro Wrestling game gave us A Winner Is You. With one epic guitar solo after another on 24 Nights, Eric Clapton embodies the spray-painted slogan that made him a household name all around London. And he seems like an entirely different performer than the bespectacled and self-deprecating Unplugged frontman playing blues songs about malted milk. So what can we learn from our analysis of these two Eric Clapton performances? Well, in a small, intimate venue, remember, there is no illusion of separation between the performer and the audience. You cannot pretend that they can't hear you or that you can't hear them. You might be able to get away with that once for one comment, one joke, one heckle, but that's it. You will not be able to repeatedly ignore what the audience is saying and doing. So as an example, if you happen to be wrestling in a 200-seater and the crowd begins to bat a beach ball around, you're going to have to acknowledge that, and you're going to have to deal with it to the best of your ability. So in the case of being a babyface where you need the audience to like you, go about that in a charming or self-deprecating way. And if you're working heel and you want the audience to dislike you, you might tackle that same situation in a nasty, rude, or obstinate way. But to take that same example and move it into a large venue setting, let's say you're wrestling in a 10,000-seater when the audience starts batting that beach ball around, I don't think you need to acknowledge it. And similarly, if one fan stands up and you hear one heckle, I don't think you need to acknowledge that either. In other words, in that giant arena setting, you have the freedom to sometimes disregard the audience. Not all of the time, but yes, some of the time, you can choose to ignore the crowd. You can do this because the large venue setting provides a degree of separation between audience and performer. And so long as you are able to still command the stage, like Clapton does in 24 Nights, there are parts of the performance where the actual moment-to-moment responses of the audience are somewhat irrelevant. But this part is really crucial, so listen carefully. You have the freedom to ignore the audience in certain spots only when you have firm command of the stage. And if the audience threatens to usurp your command of the stage, in those moments you have no choice but to deal with that heckler or that beach ball being batted around. Hey, before I move on, if you're getting something out of today's video, take a moment and like it now. And if you've not yet joined the Till We Make It tribe, subscribe down below, please. A situation in which the audience threatens to usurp the performer's command of the stage is a scenario we sometimes describe by saying the audience is trying to get themselves over. And this is increasingly common in the social media age, when everyone imagines that everything they have to say deserves to be heard by everyone. There is an artificially inflated sense of self-worth. You know what I mean? In 2019, Psychology Today published an eye-popping study they conducted showing the direct correlation between the routine posting of selfies to social media and feelings of superiority and entitlement. So it should come as no surprise that in the social media era, there are more audience members than ever before with feelings of superiority and entitlement who are willing to try and usurp command of the stage from the performers. So this is a real challenge that anyone performing before a modern audience is likely to face. And that's why it's so important that we understand the ways in which venues of different size change not only the type of rapport we must cultivate with our audience, but also the different ways in which we have to command the stage. I created today's video to best equip you for the challenge of performing for a modern audience when you slide into the squared circle. And that's exactly what informs the philosophy of my book, 7 Keys to Becoming a Better Performer, a book for fellow professional wrestlers. Find out why it is on the shelves of wrestlers from around the world, including those you watch on television every single week. Grab it right now over on Amazon, or I'll read you the entire book myself on audible.com.